penalty. But of course, you don't think of the penalty necessarily as the person who is being accused. You just think of a person as some person with like a whistle and it blows or something. And it's a really, really bad word for a person who just expresses who just passes a document because he wants the truth to be heard. And I think these words are actually being constructed conspicuously to discriminate against the person who's doing that.
I think, I mean, certainly for another show maybe when we have the focus of the debate on it, there's a very fine line between privacy and public interest. And I think WikiLeaks maybe pushes that button very, very hard when asking that question. I mean, how far do we take the public's right or what the public wants the rights in terms of documentation? What is the limit of their right to see information stored on computers compared to the privacy of an individual? For example, maybe information on an internal memo sent by the Prime Minister, for example. Where does public interest stop and privacy start? And who makes the decision as to where something is private and where something is in the public interest? And I think what a lot of the problem with the WikiLeaks is occurring is because these documents are getting released indiscriminately. Is that a bad thing?
That's not true at all. That's one of the patterns of disinformation. You have lots of them being repeated. One of them is that Bradley Manning is the person who brought this thing. It's not a proven fact. And in this case, one of the reckless things that people say is that it's just gossip and it's not important or it's about people's personal lives. But the fact is they have to go they've only done 1% or less than 1% of the entire stack of documents. They only did over 2,000 of them. They have 250,000 to go through. And they go very carefully and think what's supposed to be inside. So
I wouldn't suggest for 1 minute that the documents were randomly revealed. What I'm saying is that, and this comes down to the question of where this line is between privacy and public information, because these documents that are released, how do we know as mere observers, as mere readers of websites, know what other implications could occur from these documents being released, for example? Now, I'm not saying about what diplomats have to say about each other behind closed doors and sending internal emails. That sort of playground chatter is something that we all knew went on. It was no surprise to anybody, I think. But what I mean is, if documents are being released, who is the person who is saying, well, we know everything about what's going on here. We're happy to release this because we know that there's nothing is going to occur as a result of releasing this. That's a question that I'm asking, and that's why I say, where's the line between privacy and public knowledge, and who decides what that line is and where that line is? Because, like I say, an innocent release of a document that says, the president went down to the shops on a Tuesday could have severe implications in other areas.
That's more of a privacy issue. There is this transparency versus privacy thing. So I usually try to define this as transparency is where the public is being affected or the public is supposed to know of certain things. So if you represent me because I voted for you, then I deserve to know what you do for me professionally. So who you meet, what you tell them, what you do. But I don't have any rights over what you do in your personal life. So that's privacy. There is the transparency part, and that's just to do with an obligation to your job as a public servant or as a public administration or public office. All these, the word public is supposed to mean you work for the public. So it makes sense for this to be transparent or open or available. In some cases, what Neelie Kroes was saying, and she's a very highly regarded person in the European Commission for many, many, many years. She's been saying that just shows you that the government should work in a transparent way. She wasn't denouncing what these people were doing. It basically only reinforced what she's been trying to do for years now, and it is to work more openly and to document what she was doing. So,
okay, just let me throw this example. It's grossly unfair, and it's grossly outrageous. But let me just cite this example and see what you take as the answer to it. Say, for argument's sake, I'm the Prime Minister and I have an affair with my secretary. Would you consider internal emails between me and my secretary as being public knowledge or private?
No, they don't share such things.
No, okay.
Actually,
all right.
It won't be on cables either. That's the thing. You have to remember what cable is. It's been sent by embassies.
Okay. We're just talking about general privacy. I'm not trying to relate this to WikiLeaks. I'm not suggesting that WikiLeaks. I'm just trying to draw out this whole definition that I've been making a point about the line between privacy and public knowledge. Okay, so you said that my affair with my secretary as a Prime Minister is of no interest to the public, it's private. Would you agree?
Yes.
How about if the allegation is that my secretary is giving me tips on how to run the country? Now is my email between me and my secretary public right to know, or is that still private? Now this is where the line starts to get a bit grey instead of black, and this is the point I'm trying to make. It's not clear cut as public right to know, that's private, public right to know. There's always a grey area. I mean, it's this grey area which introduces an element of risk whenever any document's released, because there are other avenues, other things at play that we're not aware of as mere readers of this material. That was the sort of issue I was trying to pull out. Any comment?
It's a good question.
See what I mean?
But
The point I'm making is nobody's right,
the
nobody's
thing
wrong.
about it is you won't find it in cable. So what a person might say is, okay, cable is being recorded in writing. Now, if you make a contract, if a person makes a contact with an affair, with a girlfriend or something like that, I suppose then if it's being signed in an official way, I'm not talking about a letter on an envelope or something like that. I'm talking about something more official than that. Then you can expect the person to write there something which can be censored slightly, to be redacted, to remove any personal, relationshipy things, and have the professional thing being shown. And that's been happening with Microsoft. Sometimes you have those documents. You don't see any of the personal things, but you do see the relevant parts that discuss business things. And lawyers actually do make the distinction and decide what's appropriate for people to see and what isn't. But in this case, if you're talking about verbal communications and things like that, you don't really expect this to be so accurate even. I mean, you don't really want cables to just kind of throw all kinds of theories out there. These are things that take a long time to process and for people to watch before they send them between the embassies. So it's kind of, so I suppose you always have a certain limit. Like if somebody knocks on your door and you say something like, oh, we just launched the missiles or something, that's kind of like, but of course people don't do it like that. If you do major things, it usually has to require some paper trail or some authorization and people communicate, and that's just what that's the thing, that's the type of stuff you can put up on a website, and that's what the European Union is trying to do now, increasingly, is to track things and to build the website in a way which produces documentation for all sorts of moves. And Obama was promising to do that as well, and he did to a certain extent. Now they have all kinds of websites with open access and open data, and you can download things also in the UK. You have lots of sites where you can download raw data in all kinds of formats, especially the limited by semicolons and things like that, so you can open it in every spreadsheet and make whatever use of you want of that to train times or public data budgets, whatever. But here you have this thing with cables, and that's a big gap, because you kind of think, well, they could have actually written them with certain awareness that the public will see that sort of stuff. And you know what? They could still actually lobby, as one of the things they get criticized for is for lobbying for companies. The government actually working on behalf of Boeing or on behalf of Monsanto and trying to send those seeds. They could do this publicly, but do it in a more respectful way, and to do it in a more restrained way, if they knew it was going to be transparent, if it was going to reach people's eyesight. That's one of the reasons I try to work transparently in an IRC channel, because I know it improves behavior. Because if people watch you, you behave differently. One of the reasons that people work in couples sometimes, and it's one of the reasons people have to do certain things under supervision, is because they will behave better if they feel scared of somebody who's watching, or somebody might catch me if I do that.
I think the important thing I just want to mention was that this discussion was no sort of criticism of WikiLeaks. It's a general question which has been sort of niggling at me for quite a while in regards to privacy and all these issues. I mean, the internet's been very good at bringing every piece of information to the fore. I mean, certainly if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, things about
also the development of code. There is a big analogy here, because everything to do with sharing the code as you develop, especially internationally, was only facilitated by the internet. And that's like the early 90s, when you had some web interfaces, not just FTPs and things that you had before. Linux was started developing in 1991, and only when it was uploaded to an FTP server, people started to really share this thing and make use of that. So if you're looking at things like code, we can actually develop things openly now. We don't have to hide malicious features because everything is being documented and no certain person can actually secretly implement something. Which relates to also recent news about the Sandy Bridge,